Genghis Khan of Mongolia, Julius Caesar of the Roman Empire, Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte of France, Alexander the Great. Do you notice anything they have in common? Indeed, they were all exceptional leaders and brilliant military commanders. They embarked on resounding conquests that echoed across the world. For me personally, and many others, Alexander stands out as the most remarkable name among the great generals in history. The life of this king was marked by countless battles and a series of victories. Yet one day, the great emperor suddenly passed away at a strikingly young age. At that time, he was riding an unbroken wave of battlefield triumphs. His death left the world stunned and curious about its true cause. Why did an emperor at the pinnacle of his life depart so unexpectedly? Could there have been a conspiracy lurking behind this death? It's great to see you all again in today's video. Our topic today is unraveling the mysterious death of Alexander the Great. To some extent, both you and I have heard of the name Alexander the Great. He ranks among the 10 greatest generals in history, revered by humanity as a godlike figure. Alexander the Great was born with the blood of a warrior. He was the son of King Philip II, who shaped and built the kingdom of Macedon, and Queen Olympias. From the earliest days of his life, he was hailed as a descendant of Achilles. Achilles, the mightiest warrior in Greek mythology. This belief was well-founded, as the Macedonians of the 4th century BC saw Greek mythological heroes as mortals. Moreover, Queen Olympias' family claimed descent from Molossus, a grandson of Achilles. Thus, he was raised in an ideal environment from childhood to adulthood. The belief in his connection to the mighty warrior Achilles was deeply ingrained in his mindset. This conviction grew stronger as his parents wove it into his daily life. As a result, Alexander always felt a profound parallel between himself and Achilles. From a young age, he harbored an ambition to become a warrior, sparking debates that divided public opinion. Being shaped as Achilles' descendant from childhood partly fueled Alexander's admiration for this legendary figure. Yet some argued that this great emperor was merely deifying himself. This matter remains impossible to verify with absolute certainty. But historical records reveal that the ancient Macedonians truly regarded him as a god. At the age of 13, he studied under the renowned philosopher Aristotle. This mentor profoundly influenced Alexander's life from ages 13 to 16. His teacher provided Alexander the opportunity to learn, explore, and unleash all the essential qualities of a warrior. Yet, a noble lineage and an excellent education alone wouldn't have earned him the title of a great man. A pivotal event altered his life entirely, ushering in the most glorious chapter of Alexander's reign. He married Roxana, daughter of King Oxyartes of Bactria, in a union steeped in political significance. This marriage bolstered Alexander's power across Asia. In 336 BC, King Philip II was assassinated. Following his father's sudden death, Alexander ascended the throne at age 20. He inherited a mighty yet turbulent kingdom. This compelled the young king to resolve conflicts and reassert his authority. Alexander swiftly quelled internal and external foes, making Macedon's name resound throughout Greece. With strength comes expansion. Alexander the Great set out to conquer the vast Persian Empire. Fulfilling his late father's dream, he overcame all obstacles, leading his army to a string of victories. Persia soon fell to Achilles' heir, followed by the Anatolian Peninsula, Syria, and Egypt in defeat. Alexander's greatest triumph was the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC. It stands as a defining clash against the Achaemenid Empire. This victory secured him vast territories and abundant resources. Historians praise Gaugamela as the perfect battle, showcasing Alexander's military genius most vividly. So, how did this battle unfold? Between 690 and 328 BC, the Achaemenid dynasty, or the First Persian Empire, dominated the Mediterranean region. At its height, this superpower stretched from India's borders to Egypt and neared northern Greece. The emperors who founded and built this empire excelled in their roles, but by Darius III's reign, that legacy faltered. The Achaemenid Empire weakened noticeably, plagued by civil wars and rebellions from rogue forces. Seizing this opportunity, Alexander and his troops devised a plan and launched their conquest. In March 333 BC, the great king began his first assault against Darius III and the Persian royal army at the coastal city of Issus. Darius III's strategy was to maneuver around the Macedonian coalition, aiming to cut off Alexander's supply lines from behind and force a confrontation. However, events didn't unfold as this monarch had calculated. Alexander personally led his elite cavalry, charging at full speed to secure a swift victory. Beyond that, he wielded his intellect to deliver the most decisive blow in this Persian campaign. Issus, famed for its vast valley, still saw the Macedonian emperor position supply troops hidden in distant hills. The night before the battle, the Persians, fearing a surprise attack, remained on high alert. Yet again, Darius's expectations were upended. At dawn, the Persian army took to the battlefield, attempting to execute their preset plan. This pincer maneuver seemed perilous, but Alexander's brilliance shattered it in an instant. He ordered his forces into a slanted formation, concentrating their full might on the right flank. As history records, Macedon's elite infantry and cavalry swiftly repelled the enemy. Seizing the moment, Alexander drove his troops straight into the heart of the Persian defenses. With years of combat experience, piercing Darius III's central stronghold proved no great challenge for the great king. He personally slew the Persian emperor's charioteer and nearly captured him once more. Yet Darius escaped successfully on horseback. As the king fled, his army, leaderless like a snake without its head, abandoned resistance and scattered. Alexander's cavalry pressed on, relentlessly pursuing and annihilating the Persian forces and their king. But before Alexander could strike, Darius III was slain by his own cousin. This act of betrayal became a thorn in Alexander's side, and he dealt with the traitor mercilessly. Ultimately, he emerged as Persia's new master. His dominion vastly expanded. The Battle of Gaugamela became legendary, a testament to Alexander's battlefield genius and ingenuity. From a young king of Macedon, Alexander rose to become the great emperor of Persia and ruler of Greece. He was also lord of Asia Minor and pharaoh of Egypt. At that point, he was just 25 years old. His conquest showed no signs of slowing. Over the next 8 years as emperor, Alexander led his army an additional 11,000 miles, founding 70 new cities. In doing so, he forged an empire spanning 3 continents, covering roughly 2 million square miles, equivalent to 5 million square kilometers. At that time, it was nearly impossible to find a nation capable of halting the great king's onslaught. By May, Alexander had begun planning a new campaign, poised to execute it. He intended to march his army westward, preparing to invade India. However, it all remained a plan. His campaign was halted indefinitely by a shocking event that rocked the world. What was it? Shockingly, Alexander the Great suddenly passed away at the age of 33, an age far too young for such an unforeseen death. Strangely, a general invincible on the battlefield surely possessed extraordinary health, yet he died abruptly. According to many historical accounts, before his death, Alexander held a memorial ceremony for his close friend Hephaestion. But that night, he suddenly felt intense pain and collapsed on the spot. The great king was immediately taken to his chambers for examination and monitoring. Records note Alexander's initial symptoms: agitation, chills, a stiff neck, and sharp stomach pain. Even the slightest touch to his body caused excruciating agony. Later, he experienced intense thirst, high fever, and bouts of delirium. Over several nights, the emperor endured seizures and hallucinations. In his final stages, Alexander could no longer speak, only able to move his limbs. At last, he succumbed to respiratory failure, freeing himself after 12 days of torment. Alexander's death was something no one could have foreseen at the time. He had endured countless hardships and fought in numerous brutal battles without any sign of waning strength. Moreover, in 325 BC, Alexander single-handedly faced South Asia's fiercest warriors. Despite being pierced in the lung by an arrow, he soon resumed marching along Iran's coast. Thus, for a great king like Alexander to fall gravely ill and die so swiftly plunged his 500,000 soldiers into utter despair. They were gripped by confusion and fear, uncertain of who would succeed him, as the great king had no succession plan. The sudden loss of their commander sparked a massive crisis. People vied to become the new king, leading to conflicts known as the Wars of the Diadochi. Alexander the Great's death became one of history's most sudden and enigmatic departures. Why? Because to this day, the true cause of his death remains undiscovered. All we have are theories and debates, no definitive explanation or concrete evidence for Alexander the Great's mysterious end. Today, numerous hypotheses exist. Let's examine them one by one. Many believe he died of malaria or typhoid fever, as his symptoms somewhat align with these diseases. However, this explanation was quickly dismissed due to a lack of solid evidence. In Alexander's era, malaria typically struck tropical regions, yet he and his army were in central Iraq, a vast desert expanse. It's odd to imagine malaria carrying mosquitoes thriving in such an arid place. Meanwhile, typhoid fever spreads via contaminated food or water, often as an epidemic, not isolated to one or two individuals. Furthermore, no historical records suggest a typhoid outbreak in Babylon during Alexander's death. It seems likely, then, that our great king didn't perish from a disease. Another theory deemed more plausible and widely debated is that Alexander was poisoned. Indeed, a man like him had no shortage of enemies, those envious of his achievements. Thus, it's reasonable that someone might have sought to harm and overthrow Alexander. The culprit may have exploited a banquet and the great king's grief to slip poison into his food or drink. Moreover, historical accounts note that Alexander's body showed no signs of decay for 6 days after death, despite the sweltering heat. One explanation suggests a poison slowed the decomposition process. If true, what was Alexander the Great poisoned with? Experts have studied and categorized poisons that could produce the symptoms the Macedonian king suffered. The fever, headaches, thirst, and coma could stem from roughly 20 different toxins. This leaves many bewildered, which was the true culprit behind this great king's death. Fortunately, among the 20 identified poisons, one stands out: hellebore, also known as white hellebore. Native to Central and Southern Europe since around 1100 BC, it was once used as a purgative. White hellebore was also documented as a weapon, poisoning entire cities' water supplies, causing fever, coma, and death shortly after. Notably, Alexander himself used hellebore roots as a remedy, leading many to suspect he was poisoned with this very plant. Even today, modern technology has unearthed evidence and scientific studies supporting this theory's plausibility. One such study comes from Dr. Leo Shep of New Zealand's National Poison Centre. He posits that Emperor Alexander died from drinking fermented hellebore-laced wine. Why this conclusion? Dr. Shep spent over a decade researching and gathering evidence on poisons. He initially hypothesized Alexander was poisoned with arsenic or strychnine. But these toxins kill instantly, not tormenting the victim for 12 days, as the great king endured. To be certain, Leo tested other poisons like aconite, wormwood, saffron, and henbane. Dr. Shep's theory: someone fermented white hellebore and slipped it into the emperor's wine. In his distressed state at the feast, Alexander may have drunk heavily, oblivious to anything unusual in his cup. Though seemingly convincing, this argument has a glaring flaw. Fermented white hellebore is bitter. Even a small amount in food or drink would be easily detectable. How could someone who used this plant as a remedy fail to notice its taste in his wine? Some suggest that, lost in grief over his friend's death, the king paid little attention to his surroundings. Additionally, skilled preparation could mask hellebore's bitterness, leaving a sweet flavor and pleasant aroma. If true, who dared to lace Alexander's wine with hellebore when his legion was fiercely loyal to him? Suspicion turned toward the generals under his command. Evidence suggests some of Alexander's generals disobeyed orders, following him to distant lands reluctantly. In 325 BC, his army mutinied on India's eastern riverbanks when ordered to march toward the Ganges. His generals joined this rebellion. Yet, to this day, no evidence has surfaced to convict any specific general. Thus, the theory of Alexander being poisoned with white hellebore remains unresolved, lacking a definitive answer. Still, not everyone agrees with this hypothesis. One dissenter is John Grieve, a Scottish detective, who argues the emperor wasn't poisoned by hellebore, but died from another cause. It's possible Alexander's physicians accidentally overdosed him, leading to his sudden demise. They may have mistaken white hellebore for another plant in Babylon or misread a label. This theory gains traction from a curious study: 4 cases of vomiting, pain, and coma after consuming a wild garlic variant. These symptoms mirror what the great king endured for 12 days, though those 4 survived. This leads to another possibility: Alexander unknowingly ingested white hellebore. Though it sounds far-fetched, it's among the possibilities if we assume the poisoning theory holds. Additionally, some sources suggest the Macedonian emperor died from a deadly bacterial infection contracted at the River Styx. Let's talk about this river. The Styx in Greece is often called the River of Black Water. It's formed by various streams atop the mountains of the Peloponnese Peninsula. The Styx is considered a gateway to the underworld in Greek lore. Locals believe it encircles the realm of Hades, god of the underworld. Its waters are highly toxic, corrosive, and lethal. In mythology, to preserve their lives, gods under Zeus had to speak truthfully when questioned. Lying meant facing the penalty of drinking Styx water. Thus, the Styx also symbolizes the sanctity of oaths. Anyone swearing an oath has the river as their witness. Failing to uphold a vow brings immediate retribution. So, What happens to those who drink this deadly river's water? One theory posits they'd be rendered mute and immobile for a year. Another suggests victims endure excruciating physical torment. Typical symptoms include high fever, loss of voice, coma, and death from a secondary illness. Sound familiar? It closely resembles what Alexander suffered in his final days. It's plausible the great king inadvertently drank Styx water and met his sudden end. This wasn't, however, a punishment for lying to Zeus. Researchers have linked Alexander's prominent symptoms to a highly toxic bacterium in the Styx. A compound called caliciamycin, produced by a bacterium in the Styx, is a potent toxin metabolized in limestone. Limestone was abundant in ancient Greece. Thus, the Styx's water may have been toxic due to high caliciamycin levels, which Alexander unknowingly consumed. Yet theories about Alexander the Great's death don't end there. Today, we uncover even stranger insights into this mystery. Enter Catherine Hall, a lecturer at the University of Otago, New Zealand. She proposed a theory about Alexander's death that stunned the world. Most prior hypotheses focused on his intense fevers, abdominal pain, and coma, overlooking key details. Dr. Hall believes Alexander suffered from a neurological disorder, the true cause of his untimely demise. She further argues that his attendants saw no decay for 6 days for a simple reason: the great Alexander wasn't yet dead. Explaining her stance, she notes that, due to his many battlefield exploits, the great king was renowned for his robust health. Despite severe injuries and illnesses, he never showed signs of exhaustion. His mind remained sharp. Returning to GBS, this rare, severe autoimmune disorder affects the nervous system. The immune system attacks healthy nerve cells. Yet this condition doesn't strike suddenly and endanger its victim without cause. A common bacterium from Alexander's time, Campylobacter pylori, could have triggered its severity. Once infected, GBS variants would paralyze the great king's body, worsening over days. This reduced his oxygen needs, sustaining his body with minimal effort. Consequently, his breathing grew faint, nearly undetectable without close inspection. In ancient times, death was judged by breathing, not heartbeat or pulse. Thus, ancient physicians declared the emperor dead when he was still alive. The strongest evidence: his body didn't decompose for 6 days. This is highly unusual, a fatal oversight indeed. Still, we can't conclusively affirm this theory's accuracy. It lacks definitive proof. All arguments have been dismissed. Could humanity truly accept that the death of a great emperor like Alexander would fade into oblivion? Shall it forever remain one of the greatest mysteries in human history? Of course not. There is another way for us to verify these hypotheses and find the answer to this great mystery. That is to discover the tomb, the final resting place of Alexander the Great. From his remains, humanity could unravel centuries of lingering questions. Yet fate seems intent on burying this secret forever, barring humans from disturbing the great king's slumber. Unfortunately, we still don't know where Alexander's tomb lies. After the great emperor's death, his empire swiftly crumbled. This stemmed from power struggles among his generals and successors. One of Alexander's generals, Ptolemy, tasked with guarding his body, moved it to Memphis, Egypt, in 321 BC. Historical records suggest his remains stayed there until transferred to a tomb in Alexandria under Ptolemy's regime, which later fell. A later Ptolemaic descendant, Ptolemy Philopator, moved the emperor's body again, placing it in a communal tomb with Ptolemaic ancestors. This likely occurred between 222 and 205 BC. However, another tomb called Sema or Soma, also believed to be Alexander's, emerged in the late 3rd century BC. Historical accounts even note several rulers from various empires visiting Alexander's tomb. Among them was Octavian, Emperor Augustus, who paid respects in 30 BC. Octavian honored the mummified remains by placing flowers and a golden crown on its head. Another visit came from Roman Emperor Caracalla into 15 AD. Despite these notable visits, the tomb's location was never precisely documented. Too many conflicting details leave archaeologists baffled, unable to pinpoint his final resting place. A site and artifacts believed to have once held his remains have been uncovered. This structure, east of Alexandria, bears no inscriptions, but is notably large. It's likely where Alexander's remains were stored after being moved to Alexandria. Dating to the 3rd century BC, parts of its design resemble other ancient Macedonian tombs from his homeland. Additionally, a sarcophagus crafted for Nectanebo II, the pharaoh who fled Egypt in 343 BCE as the Persians invaded, is also believed to have once housed the remains of the great emperor. It may have been used during the period when the body was transported from Babylon to Memphis. The search for Alexander's tomb continues, though with little hope, as his resting place has been altered multiple times throughout history, and ancient cities have been buried and lost over time. Despite the discovery of numerous ruins, the final location of Alexander's tomb remains unidentified. It is highly likely that it has either sunk beneath the water or lies hidden somewhere on land. No one can say for certain, and humanity may never locate his tomb. The reality is, it's exceedingly rare for any structure to endure centuries without ruin. Moreover, even if the ruins of the tomb are discovered, experts may still be unable to determine whether it truly belongs to Alexander. Historical texts offer scant detail on the tomb's appearance and few identifiable markers. Therefore, it will take a tremendous amount of time to uncover the tomb of the great emperor, if it's even possible at all. This also means his death's true cause may never be pinpointed. Thousands of years have passed, yet debates over Alexander the Great's sudden demise remain unresolved. Some theorize he succumbed to malaria, typhoid, or poisoning. Perhaps the GBS syndrome claimed this brilliant young king. All remain hypotheses, lacking concrete evidence. Even his tomb eludes discovery, a grand mystery spanning millennia. It seems everything conspires to keep us from delving deeper into the great king's death. Perhaps we must wait longer for a definitive answer. Do you believe Alexander the Great died for the reasons above? We welcome everyone to share their views on this enigma. Goodbye and see you in our next videos. Wishing you all a wonderful day.